Welcome to Guitar Gavel, a place for people who love guitars. These are conversations with musicians, guitar enthusiasts, techs, and collectors about their guitar journey and their love of the instrument. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and be sure to sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Guitar Gavel podcast, a place for people who love guitars. And these are just stories from essentially regular people and their love of the guitar and their guitar journey. And today I'm joined by Ian Cowan, and he is actually joining us from Scotland. Ian, so great to have you here. A friend of ours, we're friends from LinkedIn. It's kind of a recurring theme here with some of these podcasts, and so glad to be in your company. And thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear. It's a pleasure to be asked. And yes, I'm joining you from very cold Scotland, winter Scotland, and I live in the southern part of Scotland. And but I'm a newbie in Scotland. I'm an English guy in Scotland, so I've got to make friends here and show me passport.
We'll kind of jump right in. We'll skip all the business bio because we just want to talk guitars, right? Yeah. And kind of my, typical opening question. Everyone's got their story of when they started. How old were you when you got your first guitar or started playing or messing around, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so I started playing at a really young age. I started at the age of 8, and I didn't have a guitar. And this is where actually my luthier things come from. So my father was a carpenter, master carpenter. And I wanted to learn to play the guitar. And my dad said, and these words have stuck with me ever since, actually. And he says, if you want something and you can't afford it, learn to make it. But if you want something and you can afford it, learn to make it better. And that's stuck with me since the age of 8. So together, we made my first guitar, which was actually a classical guitar. So my first guitar was a classical guitar that I made myself with my father. So that's how I got started, both in playing and in making music. So that's where that all started. And it was probably a horrible guitar, but at the time it was the best thing in the world. And if I still had that now, it would be, oh God, it would probably be atrocious. But it was first attempt, and I did most of it, and he just guided me. Obviously, sharp tools and that, I had to be careful with things like that. But he taught me things with wood that has lasted my whole lifetime. And he was not a guitar maker or a luthier. He was just a master carpenter. But he found out how to do these things himself, how you do the scales and things like that, the scale length, divide it, etc., by a number of frets. So I learned the hard way, pieces of paper, not like people who've got templates now and machines. It was the hard way on calculating it by hand. So it was actually very good for maths as well. So that started my interest in guitars. And then I wanted to get to electric guitar because my first, if you like, inspiration for that was Richie Blackmore in Deep Purple, and that's what really got me started in the interest of music. And this is where actually, embarrassingly, this is where I learned how electricity works. So this is
yes,
this is not good, and don't repeat this at home, kids. So I thought, right, I want to make this an electric guitar. So obviously you've got a couple of nylon strings and you've got steel wound strings on your classical guitar. So I thought, I need to make this electric. So you get these 2-pronged sockets that you would plug in a radio or something like that. So I thought, okay, if I put 2 needles in the top two strings and I keep a hold of them while I put this plug on it, I'll make an electric guitar. And then I found myself across the other side of the room. And that's how I learned how electricity works. And that's also the time I got a hiding off my father for being stupid, which has also lasted my whole life as well. But from that point on, we then made an electric guitar, which again was pretty awful. And so looking at this time, so I was 8 years old, this would have been 67, mid-70s that I did this. And then I kept that, those two guitars I'd kept until for about another 3-4 years. And then I started progressing. I went through my grades. I don't know if you do the grades in the US, but they're your music exams. So I started with my grade 1, grade 2, and you get up to grade 8 level. Now I got up to grade 7 at the time, and so I did my grade 7 by the time I was 14 on guitar. But I nearly didn't, because where I went for my first exam, the guy came in. I went into this room, and it was in the university. It was in Sunderland University. Went into this room, and there's this guy sitting behind this desk. And I'll never forget, he had a cup of tea or coffee, and he was stirring it with a Kit Kat, with a little piece of chocolate bar. He was stirring it. He said, "Sit down." Asked what I was going to play, so I told him what I was going to play. It was Romance d'Amour, was the first tune. And I sat down and started to play, and then he hit the desk and pointed at the floor, and I didn't have my foot on the footstool. Oh, God.
Wow.
How to make a young boy nervous. Yeah, sure. Somehow I managed to get through that. It wasn't a theory exam, it was just practical, that one. But yeah, I passed it. Somehow I passed it. But yeah, goodness me, that was a nerve-wracking experience.
So I'm not familiar with the grid system.
Grades.
Okay, got it. So it is at that, for a little context, at age 14, was that sounds like that was likely pretty advanced? Was that pretty advanced? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was, I would say, not that I'm bright or anything like that, but yeah, grade 8 is your final level, and then you go into conservatoire. That kind of thing. But I got up to grade 7, and then really at that age, 14, it was like girls.
Right.
Rock and roll and girls, and yeah, so I kind of dropped that, and I was more into sort of rock then, if you know what I mean. So I didn't really pursue it any further with the grades, but yeah, that was quite. So for being 14, getting grade 7, yeah, that I would say that was quite advanced at the time. So yeah.
So you kind of had this, Brian May moment. You built 2 guitars with your dad, or at least 2, and I guess, did you go for a third, or at that point your next guitar, was it a production guitar?
So my next guitar, I made a Strat. So this was entirely myself, and this is when I was really getting into the love of lutherie and building guitars. And it was those words that my father had said: if you want something you can't afford it, learn to make it. But if you can, learn to make it better. Now, I couldn't afford it. I was a young lad doing paper rounds, picking up golf balls and things for pocket money, which was really spent on strings and guitar lessons. But I started saving up money, and my dad used to take me down to a place in North Yorkshire called John Boddy's, and it's in a place called Knaresborough in North Yorkshire, and it was this wood shop, and you could get any kind of wood in there. And I used to go, I didn't usually always come away with something, but I used to go purely for the smell, and that wood smell, and oh my word, the smells were amazing. And what I used to do was get offcuts and scraps and things like that, because I was a young lad, couldn't afford to buy, wood. So I'd get scraps and offcuts, and I was there regularly, and I would learn to glue things, and I used it's when I first started then gluing bodies, and then I learned to book match, and this was an important aspect of learning, was book matching. And I used to use a glue that they use for boat building, which was a powder, and you mix it with water to create a kind of resin. And I learned to sort of glue guitars together, necks and bodies, boot matching with using cascamite glue, and that was a boat building glue. So yeah, that taught me how fibers of wood work and how you can interlock them with just water and powder, so to speak, and not essentially a glue, but it formed the bond between the fibers of the wood, and that would become stronger than the wood outside of it. So these are lots of little techniques I learned along the way, and then I learned about making my own pickups and about magnets, magnetism. I would make my own coil winding things, all rudimentary stuff, and I started making my first pickups. Goodness, about 1981, I started making my own pickups, and then learned how to do that. And obviously they were rubbish. I didn't understand about the number of coils and that, and were never even. But I experimented at the time with different Alnico's magnets that you could get. And I'd actually built my first pickup was a blade pickup rather than pole pieces. And in 1981, I built some pickups for this Strat guitar that I'd made previously, which was made out of ash. And I absolutely loved that guitar. So it was a solid piece of ash. It wasn't joined, this particular one. And I searched around because I'd heard about tiger stripes, and I wanted the pick guard on this to be tiger stripe. So there was no internet at the time, and guitar magazines, and I found this company called Touchstone Tone Woods. I think it was down Bathway, and I discussed with them, look, I'm after this piece I want to make this scratch plate, and it's got to be this wide and this long. Ooh, gosh, you're never going to get anything that wide. And I said, no, I'm determined. I don't want to join. I wanted one piece. And obviously everything was telephone back then. And they came back to me, and so they said, look, we've got this piece of sycamore. It's very highly figured flame. And because of what you're doing, and I've been talking to them and everything like that, they sent us it for free. And which was just amazing. So that was a natural pick guard. Put my own blade pickups in there. All single coil blade pickups. The neck was pure maple, but we had the fingerboard was maple, but it was glued. And I made at the time the hockey stick headstock on it.
Okay.
So this was a blue transparent finish, and the lacquer, if you like, what was the name of the lacquer I used? Ruston's plastic coating. And I was like a polyurethane, but you could get it a glass-like finish. It was actually used for furniture, Ruston's plastic coating, for top quality furniture where you get glass finish on a nice dining table. So I'd used that, and I'd put some stain in it, and I got this finish, and that was just my best guitar ever. Again, looking back, it was probably crap. Pardon, I'm speaking out of turn there, but it was probably rubbish, but it played amazing. And this is where I learned action, and I learned the art of intonation. I learned about, your frets, and I learned an awful lot on that guitar. And that's where it steamrolled, and I just got hooked on building. And my first production guitar was an Ibanez Steve Lukather, and I got that at the age of 16. I left school, I was going to college, actually in Scotland, in Glasgow. And this is when I first started getting into playing bands. And a friend of mine said, I want to get this band together, and I talked to my parents, and they loaned me the money to go and buy a guitar and an amp. And walked into this shop in Newcastle, and they just had these guitars arrived. And I'll never forget seeing the Steve Lukather model on the wall, and it was a bird's eye maple top, but like a faded blue-green colour. And it was just like, whew, that. And I bought a Carlsberg Stingray amp. And that was the first equipment I bought. Now, going back then, all of it together was about £400, which I don't know what that is in dollars, probably about $550. So it was expensive, but looking back now, it was cheap. And that that guitar was just absolutely amazing. Looked the part, played the part. And the first thing I did when I got it, I took it apart. I had it. It had gold covers on the pickups, and I don't like that. So I cut them off. So you just expose the bobbins of the humbuckers. But that was an amazing guitar. And then I sold that about a year later. I traded it for another Ibanez Roadstar, and it was this red one I saw, but it had a lock and trem. And it was Ibanez's first lock and trem, and I saw that, so I traded it for that. And that was the guitar I first regret getting rid of, the Ibanez Steve Lukather. And then I started doing jobs, getting more money. And now this is a guitar you might want to cover actually in your series. It was made by Burns, and it was a Burns Flight.
All right, making a note.
Yeah, Burns Flight, FLYTE, made by Burns of London. And I got this guitar, and it was silver, and it's like a flying V kind of shape, but it reminded you of a paper aeroplane that you would build. And that guitar was just an incredible playing machine. The neck, the string action, it was ebony fretboard, but the string action was, I've never seen, even to this day, anything quite as low as that. It was just incredible to play. And I only had that guitar for about 6 months, and we were playing a gig. Can't remember where the gig was, but we're playing a gig, and then the stuff was like in what was the green room, and it got stolen. And that's the one that got away. That's the one I wish, and they're rare to find a Burns Flight. So there's two regrets, early regrets. There's been many since, but two early regrets was getting rid of me Steve Lukather and having that guitar stolen. And so yeah, that was kind of how it all started. But I really got the bug for building guitars, and I made I've got this. There's another story as well with the numbers on my guitar. So I number my guitar. So this is quite an old one. So this is Swamp Ash, quite hollow sounding. So this is one of the strats I've made. This is kind of beaten up quite a bit, this one. I've had this one, goodness, 30 years, perhaps, something like that. We're now 2022 years, so this is probably about 30 years old. It's seen some action. It's still actually got the original frets on here as well. But I've done a number of other changes to it with the wiring and things like that. But yeah, so this is one of the oldest guitars I've actually still got. So that's but strats I've probably made over the years. I wouldn't like to count, but in excess of about 80 strats I've made of various different types. And
that's
I used
80.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've got to think, I'm a strat guy, and I'm mainly a strat guy because of the scale length. So I don't really play Gibsons because I've tried many times. I've got a Les Paul, but I don't play it because of the shortened scale length. And I think after so many years, you get used to which is your scale length, and mine's the Fender scale length. I tried a PRS, and I had a PRS for a couple of years, but again, I couldn't quite. Muscle memory was not there, if you know what I mean. My muscle memory was somewhere else. So yeah, I'm a Fender guy, and anything I've got is always generally a Fender scale length. But the guitars I've made them in different scale lengths for people. Sorry, the camera's going out of. So I'll put another light on because it's dark here now. It's better.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry, it's. I think it's going out of focus because it's getting dark. But yeah, I would make commissions for people, so I didn't advertise, all word of mouth. And I used to make guitars. I would give them away free. I would do things to commission, but what I used to like to see was I'd make guitars for a number of different bands, and they used them live, and it was just great to see them being used. And I played with a band, and we were recording in a studio in Newcastle at the same time when U2 were there, and this is before U2 really blew up, and they were recording there as well. And I think that was 1980. 83, 84, something like that. We were recording in this studio, and U2 were there as well. So this was a nice little interesting story. So yeah, I just got this bug for building guitars, and I just got hooked on it. And that's where this thing came from. My dad, if you can afford it, learn to make it better. And I'm still hooked on it. I do less of it now, but yeah, there's. My challenge at the minute, what I'm making is hollow body guitars. That's what I'm trying to do. But I've got some three I'm making at the minute, which is my own design. It's an offset body shape. They're in sort of the garage next door. And one of those is going to a guy on LinkedIn who he's got his own music channel and he teaches people. A guy called Jerry Cherry. He's on LinkedIn, and I'm making a one for him, but I'm making a special one for him because I'm going to be putting cherries all over it.
That's cool.
So
you're the first Strat style guitar you made, the blue one that you described. What happened? Do you recall what happened to it?
I gave it to my next door neighbor. I kept it until 1996. I'm just thinking when I bought my first house. So 1996, and my neighbor next door. And by this time, I've got an awful lot of guitars, far too many. But I'd gone into different things, and I had this guitar, and I wasn't using it then. And he wanted to play, and I actually gave it to him. I don't know where he is now. Moved on and moved house, but yeah, it's in somebody else's hands. But the last Strat I made for myself was this one. So this one I made, and this weighs a ton. So this is Alder, 2-piece Alder. These pickups, made these pickups myself in this one. It's Fender stock and big block bridge in this. And again, so this is the last one I made myself. I made this last year, and I've vowed I'm not going to make any more Strats because I've just made too many and I'm hooked on them. But it's actually, I'll point out something here, if you can see. So you see these 3 dots here?
Yes.
So these are gold pins. So on all my guitars somewhere, they've got these 3 dots, and that refers to my family. So me, my wife, and my daughter. So you'll find them on every guitar. and the number 19 is also on every guitar somewhere. So you saw on the green one, the number 19. So the 19 refers to my daughter's birthday when she was born. But I also used to do a bit of car racing, and that was my racing number. So that's what 19 refers to. People have asked me that a few times, but on every single guitar, there was 3 dots, gold pins, and the number 19. So it's like a tattoo for guitars.
That is so cool. Yeah, you've got your own little trademark. And the 19 is a little less subtle, but the 3 pins can just be like, those are like crop circles.
Yeah. And it's always done in this triangle, and that triangle is a certain size as well. So it's 1 centimeter between pins. I get anal like this with little details. It's a feeling of mine.
Well, it's okay. It's what engineer types, it's what you do. You are that way. Well, what's on your left behind you? What is over there next to
this one? Yeah, this is so as I've grown older, music tastes have kind of changed as well with it. And in the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I've started to get into jazz. So I'm playing more jazz than anything else, and it's a kind of crossover jazz blues that I kind of like to play these days more than anything else. And I've had this thing. You can't actually buy these anymore. So this is a Greg Bennett designed Samick guitar. So it's spruce and it's maple back and sides. It's mahogany necked, and it's a walnut fingerboard on this. But for a hollow body, it's actually quite heavy. But it's got Seymour Duncans in this, so this is a totally stock. But it's in tune. It's got a beautiful acoustic tone to it as well. But the clarity of the notes, I've never heard pickups quite like these. So the clarity of the notes, I think I recorded something and I put it on LinkedIn while I was playing up here, and some people had mentioned to us, it's like the clarity of what those notes sound up here is, it's almost like a Gretsch pickup clarity to them. But this is a bit of an unwieldy beast. It's quite big, but it's as you can see the finish on this, it's gorgeous. Wine sort of wine color, and the headstock on here, so the name, the Greg Bennett, and the logos, it's actually like a gold. I don't know if you can, the light will see if I can just put that. I don't know if the light can pick that up. Oh yeah, you can just see.
Yeah, there it is.
There. So it's I like that, and I'm not into bling really, and it is a bit blingy, but you can get away with it because it's a jazz guitar. But yeah, it's beautiful to play. I don't play it enough. I've had it for a long time, and I actually got it out of my collection. A month or so ago, I got it out of my collection to. You know what? Because what I did, I've got too many guitars, and I got rid of a lot, and I kept what I really want to keep, but I only keep a certain number out. So I've got about 10, 11 that I kind of keep out that I use, and some of those are basses, and the rest I put away. And then I thought, you know what, I need to get this one out. So I got this one out, and this stays in this room now. And this one is that is, it's beautiful to play. I say when it's stock, it's not actually, because I put Gretsch knobs on it.
I was gonna ask, and I know we're bumping up against a hard stop, so maybe a couple of
actually I've just communicated, so we can go on a bit longer. So there's not a problem with that now. That's not a problem. So yeah, So there's I put Gretsch knobs on that, and I'll just get this one. Bear with me.
Go for it.
So this is my 335. It's not A335, but this is one I've done an awful lot to. Again, let's see the number 19.
Yes.
But this is the one I showed on LinkedIn where so the center block in here, there is no gaps. It's solid. So when you do the wiring, it's got to go through the F holes.
Yes, remember.
And this is I put this up on LinkedIn when I rewired this with CTS pots and things. But I'm sure the F holes are called F holes because of the F word. Because this was an absolute pig of a job to do. Now I've had this guitar for a very long time, and again, this is a beautiful player. I use this mainly for jazz and blues. But these guitars are unbelievably versatile because you can do literally anything on these kind of guitars. Whereas your Strats, you are limited, although I do try and do jazz on Strats, but these are so unbelievably versatile. Cover all music genres. And this, even though I'm a Strat guy, this is probably my favorite guitar of everything that I've got. And whilst it is a 335, it is also a Fender scale length. And so is this. That's a Fender scale length as well. That's 25.5 as well. So that's what makes this unique. It's a Fender scale length. And so this is why it's comfortable to play. But this is, I love this. This is my baby. So yeah.
How long have you had that one, Ian?
So this is probably 2014. Yeah, it's about 8 years I've had this. I had a couple of 335s before, which I bought, sold. I've traded more guitars than I've had hot dinners, to be honest. Sorry, I keep moving. That is so rude.
You're good.
Yeah, I've traded more guitars than I've had hot dinners, and I've had collection at one point, personal collection of. Wife doesn't know the number. About between 80 and 90 at one point, I think. I did pare down. I had an epiphany moment. It was about 2013. I had an epiphany moment, and I got rid of a load of stuff and sold it all, and I gave stuff away. And a lot of the guitars I'd made, I'd donated to charities and to music schools. So I made 2 replicas of David Gilmour's, his black one and his red AMG. So I made replicas of them, and I donated them to the music department of my daughter's first school, because when we went to see that school, when she went to it, and I went to the music department because she was interested in music, plays flute and violin. And I was so impressed with the kids there, but they didn't have a great deal.
I've got to interrupt, Ian. Did she have to build her first violin?
No, sure, God. No. I would have liked it to, but it's no. She started flute first, and then violin, and then back to flute. She was quite bright. Milkman's daughter, I think, because I think she's a lot brighter than me. So as they say, the milkman's daughter. But yeah, she's super bright, very intelligent, very musically creative as well. So yeah, it's good with her, but she's not into that side of it like I am. I think it's more of a guy thing, probably, that you like to tinker and take things apart and try to build them back up and see if you can save any screws, as they say.
So have you basically modified every production guitar you've owned? Is it? Yeah.
Every single one of them. I've never had a guitar where if I bought a production guitar it's never been more than a day before I've took it apart and I've done something. Never. One of the first things I do is I generally put stainless steel frets in. This one I really haven't done anything to apart from I've put the Gretsch knobs on that, but this seems a one that I don't think there's anything I can actually do to that. So I think that's possibly the exception, apart from I put Gretsch knobs on there. But every single guitar, there's always something done to it. I'll do something. And even another thing I do actually on every guitar, and I don't know if this will show up in the light. So I use gloss, but I don't know if this will show. Actually, you can see something else you'll find on my guitars is I have a gold signature there. But I don't know if you can see, but I don't use satin sort of lacquer. I use gloss lacquer, but then I sand it back to make it play smooth. So I'll just keep this on my lap. Yeah, so what I do on every guitar as well is I'll sand smooth the gloss lacquer on the backs of the necks to make them play fast as well. So I'll do that as well. That's the very first thing I do, actually, if I have a production guitar or any guitar, is I do that. It's the first thing I do if it's got a gloss. Because I don't actually like production guitars, where they use a satin or a matte lacquer, because I find that as sticky as gloss. So if I've got any that I've had that I've always had that treatment, and I use a wire wool, very fine 000 wire wool, and I'll do that on the backs of the necks. It takes very little finish off, but it just makes it super slick, smooth, and stops you sticking and things like that. So yeah.
What about, I mean, you've had quite a few over the years. Do you still have one or two on the bucket list, or have you kind of acquired and played?
Yeah. There's two guitars, if you like, on my bucket list. One's a more, you probably recognize as a Gretsch White Falcon. That's a bucket list guitar. And there's another one. It's handmade by a luthier, and it's a hollow body guitar, and it's a guitar by Bill Commons. And the guitar model is called a Black Tie, and it's a single pickup jazz guitar, if you like. And it's just the manufacturer of that particular guitar I would love to have. And there's just two. So it's the Gretsch White Falcon and the Bill Commons Black Tie, it's called. And that's what I'd really like to have. So
of course the Gretsch White Falcon is on no one else's list but yours, I'm sure.
Oh God, yeah. I think everybody would want at some point a Gretsch White Falcon. I would love one. In terms of if there's any guitars, that's out of my reach, wanted but couldn't own for various reasons, financial or whatever. There's none. Obviously, our bucket list guitars, the Gretsch White Falcon, but it goes back to that saying my dad said, if you can't afford it, learn to make it better. So if I really wanted something, I would learn to make it. And but I still like to have something that somebody else had made, particularly handmade guitars. And although there's that misnomer that more expensive guitars equals a better guitar, not necessarily so, because your music and your tone comes from your fingers, really. So
right.
And you could be playing the cheapest guitar ever, and you can make it sound amazing, but it comes from you.
That's right. It's an expression of the player, of the musician.
That's right. Yeah. And it just an expensive guitar is generally a better quality guitar, and it will last longer, and it's very well made, etc. But that's something else I've learned as I've matured, is that expensive doesn't equal great. It's you practicing equals great.
Right. That part of the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was So that's my bucket list. I'd like to own at some point. In terms of sort of musical experience, I'd have been in a number of bands, and I'm going to mention the name of this band. It's something that we set up, but the band had 18 members, 18. And this was kind of embarrassing, but I don't know if you can probably put this out. So we played, I'll say it anyway, David. So we played this gig, 18 of us. I've got a twin brother. My twin brother plays keyboards. And there was 18 of us in this band. So we had 2 drummers. We had 1 keyboardist, which would be brother, 2 bassists, and the rest of us were just guitarists. And we played this gig at this place called the Arts Centre in Washington, and it was a rock festival gig weekend. And we got a stint there, but we went there with the intention of, because there was loads of, how you would call them, spandex boys.
Yeah.
The rock gods, you'd stand there with your legs apart and head back and all the rest of it. And there was some of them that were so full of themselves, part of this music collective. And they were so full of themselves. So we had this idea, we'll put this band together, 18 of us, we'll go on, we'll do our number on there. And we did a version of Pretty Woman by, obviously, Roy Orbison. Now, this is where it probably gets a little bit, you might want to put it on. So Rob, the singer, comedian, he didn't play any instruments really. He just had a guitar around his neck, but he didn't play it. So the name of the band was, this is embarrassing. It's called,
go for it.
Yeah,
yes.
It's called Luke Love Pump and the Destroyers. Okay. It's embarrassing. And this is where it gets really crude. So Rob had tight, we all wore something spandexy. And Rob had tight white trousers on, but he had a cucumber down, the inside leg kind of thing. And so he had a music stand as if he was reading the words, but it was Penthouse. And it was on a music stand. And we knew this at the time, but there was a guy in this band who was really quite up himself. I'll not mention his name just in case, but yeah, he was quite up himself. But his girlfriend was a model in Penthouse, and she was on the front cover. And nobody noticed at first, but then people started to spot that the girl on the front cover was in the audience. So we did this quite amusingly, and we did a rendition of Pretty Woman for 18 minutes. Wow. With everybody doing the solo till they got fed up with us, and they literally pulled the plug on us doing that and kicked us off the stage. So that was probably the best musical experience of my life. Ironically, I went on dressed in tartan. So I didn't have a kilt. I was like tight tartan trousers. I had a tartan cape. Everything was tartan. And we all got dressed up for this. And it was just a fantastic musical experience. But yeah, when it became known what we were actually doing, when we were singing the song Pretty Woman to the Penthouse magazine, the girls in the audience, and we're taking the mickey, but we were teenagers, and yeah, it was great fun. It opened with a classical rendition, and I can't remember what it was. That was the Deer Hunter. So one of the guys did the opening to the Deer Hunter, and played that on classical guitar. Then we just burst into unrelated segue into Pretty Woman. And it was the rockiest version of Pretty Woman you've probably ever heard. So yeah, that was.
Dude, that is great. I'll tell you what, for the next podcast, you can just spend 30 minutes telling us about the after party that night.
Oh,
done. Yeah.
That's X-rated after 9 p.m.
I'm sure. I can imagine. Oh man, that's great. Well, Ian, this has been terrible amount of fun. Great story and great history. And I love the connection with your dad to the instrument and how it's interwoven through your journey and your life ever since then, starting at age 8. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That still stays with me. So yeah, I still take things apart that I shouldn't as well. But
you can't help. You can't help
at my age, but can't resist.
But you know about electricity now, so you're much safer than you were.
That was yeah. And for I got a smack on the rear end from my father for that as well. So
a double whammy.
My fingers and a shot in my rear end as well. So yeah, I didn't do that again.
Listen, we're gonna go ahead and end the podcast, but hang on for a minute. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit the stop button. Thanks everybody, and we will see you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ian.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to the Guitar Gavel podcast, and a special thanks to Steve Kuykendall for composing this music and being such the great guy and friend that you are. As a reminder, hit the subscribe button and sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com.